I love it. I love it. Wow. Hey, good morning. Good to see you guys. Welcome to a conversation with Sam and Ted. I'm Sam. This is Ted. Ted, you got a fan, I think, in the front row. Aaron's
Thanks,
really
Aaron.
excited
Appreciate you.
for you guys to be here. I got to tell you guys though before we get started. Man, it took everything in me not to title this a TED Talk. Yeah, that's right. I wanted to. I also thought about Sam and Ted's most excellent conversation. Some of you may get that. Yeah. Emily had an idea earlier. She said we could have gone with the good, the bad, and the Ted. And so, but Ted
The focus
wasn't
would have
really,
been in the wrong spot.
Yeah,
if
he
we
wouldn't
did
know
that.
all about that. And so, well, we're really excited for this conversation. And you guys are here online and in the room. And we have high expectations. A lot of you guys know me. I'm one of the pastors here at Soma City Church. But not everybody knows Ted, at least not as well as Aaron, who's cheering for you here. But maybe at the end of this conversation, everybody will be cheering for Ted. But Ted, why don't you take a few minutes for those who don't know you, who just met you, just tell us a little about yourself and your family and all that other good stuff.
Yeah, so I was born, and all seven siblings and I were raised like 17 minutes that way, I think. Same parents.
Can we just take a moment of silence for his parents? 8 kids. Can we just give a hand? I don't even know. I mean, that you should get like a special parking space in heaven, like front row. 8 kids. That's
right there
amazing.
in the back.
And so,
right there.
can we
That's
just give them
awesome.
a hand and say thank you? That's tremendous. I got 4, and I'm like the grace of God every day. So that's amazing. But go ahead.
Well, it worked out
Yeah.
having 3 girls first because then I just ended up having 4 moms.
Ah, there
So
you go.
they,
That is one way to look at it. But
Now I am married to Tabby, who is the best possible woman God could have possibly put me with on this planet.
look at this guy.
Uh,
Look at this guy.
It's
He
true. I
said
gotta,
that in service 1 when you weren't here. So just so you know, he's not just saying that.
and it's still true.
He
I
said it
gotta,
at run through. He said it at service 1, and he's saying it again right now. So
because it's truth.
yeah, it's good.
And so we have Brinley, who's 5, Jana's 3, and Ethan is 18 months, and they're a blast.
How do you say no to Brandon? Look at that picture. You cannot. How do you say no to that picture? You can't.
If you love her enough, you can still say no.
Oh, okay. I'm just gonna go sit down off stage. Ted, you can just go ahead and
It's the only way to get
preach
through
that.
it.
And that's a word right there. That's not even what we're talking about, but that's a word. That's a word. You love her enough, you can say no. Go ahead, man.
That's right. That's how I had to make it through. It's not easy to discipline them, but
Yeah.
got to go back to truth. I went to school at UT or TU, depending on how wise you are.
Old.
You went to UT, right?
Or
Was it
barely,
TU?
barely. It was UT when I
was it-
went. Barely.
oh,
A semester
okay.
and a half. And so I got a school ID, so I think that counts, right? And they sent me a bill. So yeah, I can,
It wasn't
claim,
UT.
I can claim,
I was
I
just
can
gonna
claim
give
being
you-
a rocket. So
I was going to give you credit for like the wisdom of
thank you.
being there
I
when it was UT.
appreciate it. Thank you. I'm old, but I'm not as old as Jim. I don't know where Jim is, so but that's always my standard when I think of old. So when I'm Jim's age, then you can call me old. So you went to UT.
Yeah, so with that, on paper, I'm a chemical engineer for NSG, making glass, but in reality, I really view myself, I feel like I'm a missionary at the plant there in Rossford, so
That's awesome.
yeah, and I've been there for like 10 years-ish, and a few years back, the team in our department kind of tagged me with a nickname. I don't know. You haven't seen me in the workplace. I'm always at church when you see me.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know what kind of nickname you give me for work, but
I don't know, but I know we have a nickname for you that you don't know about at church. Does anybody know this? You know how sometimes people have a nickname for you in person,
I
and
don't like
other
where this is
times they have.
going.
We call you Saint Ted. Like I don't know if you know this or not. Yeah, I know we preached 2 weeks ago that we're all saints because of
Right.
Jesus, right?
That's right. We're all saints.
But if anybody had a resume that was close to a saint, it would be Ted. Amen. Anybody? I'm like, and so that's what we call you when you're not around. But now I'm telling you, confessing my sins to you. Forgive me of the gossip. But what do they call you at work? What's the?
Yeah. Thanks for going back to that. So the Velvet Hammer is my
The
nickname.
Velvet
I'm
Hand.
the
What a
Velvet
name!
Hammer.
Isn't that
So
amazing?
I
What does
think
that
it's-
mean? What does that even?
I think it's like my gentle Enneagram 2 side with
Yeah.
like we're at work to do work. Like if it
Yeah.
means it's Friday and there's an hour left before we go, and there's something needs to be done safely, and it means we're out there next to a 3,000-degree furnace. Like, sorry guys, like this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna get it done. So it's
The
the
velvet
gentle
hammer.
with
Look
the.
at this guy.
We're gonna do it.
I know. We need to make a T-shirt. Can someone go reserve that domain name right now? Velvethammer.com. Aaron's writing it down. It's like trademarked. Like someone in Toledo just bought that website. Okay, so go ahead.
I'll walk up behind some operators, and they'll turn their buddy and be like, "Uh-oh, here comes the velvet hammer. You're about to get put to work."
There he is. That's awesome. That's a good reputation. So there's no way to say this, Ted. So I'm just gonna say it, and you're a little prepared now because I said this in service 1. But for those of you who don't know Ted, I feel like Ted, you were the person that my mom pointed to when I was in high school and said, "Why don't you be more like Ted?" Anybody have their parents do that? You know how your parents will look at you and be like, "You need to be more like that guy. You were that." And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you were the person that other parents are pointing to. They were like, "Be more like Ted." And I feel like that's what, when I was in high school, I was kind of like, grew up in church and did my own thing, and I feel like I didn't even know you back then, but I feel like my mom was like, "Be like Ted. Can you just be a little bit more like Ted?" And I know this is going to make you feel super duper uncomfortable, but just to put it in perspective for those of you who don't know Ted very well, because his story is really connected to the narrative that we're going to look at in Luke chapter 7 today. We're going to play a little game, right, Ted? You're looking at me like you're so uncomfortable, but we're going to play Never Ever Have. How do you say the game? Never Have I Ever. Anybody know this game? Never Have I Ever. Okay. For those of you who don't know it, it's basically I'll go through a bunch of scenarios. I was going to play with the whole room, those of you online, but it's more fun to just play with just Ted. Let's just put him on the spot. And so what we're going to do, Ted, is I don't know if you want to use your hand or do you want to stand? Which one are you more comfortable with? What?
I don't want to.
You don't want to stand. Okay. Let's use your hand. You can use it. So you're gonna hold your hand up, right? Five fingers. And so I'm gonna give a bunch of scenarios. Never have I ever. And if you've done it,
you think I want to stand?
your hand is shaking. I know. And so your knees shaking standing. And so this is simple. I just have a number of things on here. And so I'll say never have I. I'll fill in the blanks. And if you've done it before, you got to put a finger down, and we'll see how long we can go. You ready for this?
Got it. Like 3, 5.
We'll just see how long it goes. Okay, here's the first one. It's an easy softball. Never have I cheated in school. Have you ever cheated in school? Like copied, looked, and you ever cheated? You have?
No.
You've never ever cheated in school
I've
that
not.
you can. Who's cheated in school here before? Come on now, everybody, raise those hands. Yeah, that's right. See, even your folks have cheated in school. That's amazing. That's legacy right there. You do it better than your parents. You've never cheated in school. That's amazing. Okay, so how about this? Okay, we're going to get real with some of these because we're a church and we like to keep it real at Soma City. You ever smoked anything? Like you ever smoked anything? Is that?
No.
No?
Well, okay, I did.
Oh, you
So I
did?
think- yeah. So.
Okay, all right.
I mean,
Not all. You get to put one finger down, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with my brother-in-law Kevin and I, we were out back at his parents' house, and
Oh man, confession. Did you guys know this? This is not. Okay, it's about to get real, but go ahead.
we smoked a steak.
Oh my goodness,
And
this guy. Look at your boy here. Somebody come get your son, please.
I just stood there at the spatula and
Okay,
carried
we're not
it in.
okay.
So I don't know.
I feel like we need to have a different conversation. Do you know what I mean by smoke something? We got some minors in the room. I don't want to get too detailed.
That's true.
We're not going to give you steak. And I'm talking so put the finger back up. Sorry, that doesn't count. Your hand is shaking, man.
It
You're
is shaking.
It's like, oh, no. Sorry, that doesn't count. And so we're still 5 for 5 or 0 for 2, however you want to look at it. Okay, have you ever had any type of alcohol? I was going to say drunk, but based on your first 2 answers, let's just start at the base level. Have you ever, give me your...
No.
No? No.
When I was, I need to be honest. When I was 5, we were at my uncle's birthday party.
Yeah.
And I learned there's a such thing as a Jello shot.
Oh,
I didn't know at the time, but later I learned, what
Help
5-year-old
me out
doesn't
here,
like
Aaron.
Jello?
This does not count. We're not giving you that one either. Okay. So let's fly through some of these. I think I know how this is going to go. And I tried to mix it up from first service so you wouldn't see it coming. So have you kissed this one is kind of inside information. I kind of know the answer. Have you kissed anyone other than your bride? Like you've not?
Unless my mom and
No,
my sisters count.
not your mom. Not your mom or your sister. Have you, because I know this for a fact, you guys kissed for the first time on your wedding day. Is that right?
Yeah.
Not only was it the first time you guys kissed, it's the first time you had ever kissed anybody on your
Oh
wedding day?
yeah, it was. We did it right though, because I told Tabby not to worry about it.
Okay.
I
You're like,
put my
I got
hand.
this down. I
put my
Googled
hand.
it. I know
put
what
my
to
hand on
do.
her face, like in front, so no one could like see what was happening.
Did you really?
And it was terrible.
Tabby,
It
scale
was
of 1
just-
to 10. Honest, scale of 1 to 10. What would you give him for that first kiss?
It was just.
Oh, that's it. That's all you need to know. She's like,
It was.
say no more.
It was just like.
Say no more. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but never. That's never.
We're really good at it now, by the way.
Okay, you're great. Okay. All right. Do you want to? Okay, I'm just kidding. All right. 11 o'clock service. Anything goes. All right. This is going somewhere, I promise. Let's just do a couple more of these just to kind of get it out there. Have you ever, like, cussed, said a bad word? Like, like your mom's
No.
like, I want to wash your mouth out with soap. You ever?
No.
No. Why did you look over like, no? I have not even in texts or anything like that? You haven't? Like, you'd never texted or a GIF or something, emoji, nothing? You got nothing?
No.
No. Okay. All right. Wow. This is amazing. Oh yeah. Okay. One more. This one we didn't. This one surprised me. Have you ever yelled at, and your wife is here, she can attest. Have you ever yelled at your wife or your kids?
How would you define yell?
Oh my goodness.
Like,
This guy. Come on. Trust me, she would know if you've
No.
yelled before. Okay. You've ever
No.
yelled, changed your tone? You have never. Okay.
No.
This is amazing. Are you guys with me on this? Is anybody else blown away by this? Like this is okay. So I'll give you one. Have you ever been late to a meeting? Because you were late to our meeting earlier.
yes.
Yeah. We're gonna give him one. We'll give you. You can put your hand. He is shaking and trembling. Like what? I got more here, but maybe we'll save it for a little bit of time. But here's kind of the picture we're trying to paint. If you're like, where are they going with this? And I said jokingly earlier, but I was kind of serious, Ted. I feel like you. Were the kid, right, growing up in church that parents pointed to and said, hey, I want you to be more like Ted, right? And I think the reason that is, just to give some context, if you guys don't know Ted, is because you wanted to do it God's way, right? You wanted to do it the right way. You're like, okay, like this is the way of God. This is what it looks like to follow Jesus. And so you wanted to do that. And when we first had this conversation, it was really interesting because thinking about to high school, right? And so I feel like I was going in the opposite direction in high school. So I grew up in church too my whole life, and I was just like, oh, that looks a lot more fun than what we're doing at church, And so I wanted to kind of go the opposite direction, and you wanted to go the path of Christ. And here's where I think it's fascinating about our different stories between Ted and I and how we responded to growing up in a church context is that I never felt comfortable in church. I don't know if anybody's ever been there, but I always felt all through high school, a little bit into college, I always came into services like this, and I just never felt comfortable. And I think part of it is because I felt like a hypocrite, which I was, because I knew all the stuff, but I was also doing the other stuff I wasn't supposed to do. And so the whole time I'm sitting there and my mom's like, come teach Sunday school. And I'm like, do you know what I did last weekend? And it was just this weird, it just never felt like home. But Ted, what I think is fascinating is when you and I first had this conversation, you felt the same way, right? I mean, isn't that crazy that, you have a guy that did it the way you were supposed to do it, right? And you followed the steps that you were supposed to follow, but you also never felt comfortable in church. And so both of us kind of took two different, if you will, extreme responses to the same thing that we were being taught, and yet neither of us really felt like we had a place in the church. Now, I'll never forget, a year ago, Ted and I were talking, and Ted told me, you said, you used a word that stuck with me. You said, I feel like my story is useless. Like you, even though you grew up in church and did everything right, you always felt like your story was useless. Can you just tell us a little bit about what you meant by that and why you felt that way?
Yeah, I remember, like a year ago or whenever it was when we were telling some stories of people in our community and, made a video and shot it on Sunday morning, and just awesome, life-changing testimonies. And I remember just being amazed by them. But at the same time, like, after hearing that, how am I supposed to get up and be vulnerable and, like, share my story? Like, some of those questions or things you brought up earlier, like, how am I supposed to get on stage and say that? So it hasn't felt like there was room for my story, and the thoughts go through my head and still do, and I'm fighting it in God's help, but the lies that go through my head, your story is useless. Like, you can't help anyone. You have no idea what they've been through. How can you help someone? Your story is full of pride. I think one of the hardest ones was, Ted, you say it's because of God's grace or God's hand on your life. Well, that's great. What about everyone else, huh? Like, are you saying God's hand hasn't been on my life? And the hard thing is, those lies are more than just thoughts in my head. Like, I've had people, family members, like close people to me, say some of those things. And so, yeah, it just kind of feels like it silences me, or to where I don't feel like I could share that.
What are some of the things that you feel like people said to you that like either really hurt or put it in perspective for you to feel like, hey, like my story doesn't really have a place in the church?
I think the biggest thing is just I love people, right? I love being able to help people. I want to be there for people, but that I have no idea what they've been through. I haven't gone there. There's been times where I actually almost wished that there was some big outward rock bottom sin or something that I'd experienced, just so that I could do that, so that I could connect, and so that you don't have people saying like, oh, I wish you could be more like Ted, or wish, we can't all be perfect like Ted. Yeah. And, it's almost wish there was something so that, I wouldn't keep hearing my name and perfect in the same sense, because it's not true.
Yeah, it's an interesting tension, to think of how, again, I tried to go the other way, and I felt like, I don't know if there's space for my story in the church. And you went the way you were supposed to go, and you also felt like, there's no space for you in the church. And I don't know what you guys would identify with. I think all of us probably lean in a direction, right? On a scale of Sam to Ted. I don't know where you put yourself, right? Some of you are like, hey, I'm a lot closer to Ted than Sammy. And some of you are like, Sammy, I'm closer to you, but to the 100th degree, right? I don't know where you put yourself on this scale, but what I love about today's conversation and the story that we're going to look at is that Jesus introduces us to two characters that have two completely different stories. And I think every single one of us in here, regardless of your spiritual context or whether you're closer to him or me, can relate to one of these passages. And so Luke chapter 7 is where we're going to spend most of our time. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry, the words are going to be up on the screen. Just to give you guys a little bit of a context, Luke chapter 7 is really fascinating because Jesus is having dinner with a religious leader, a Pharisee. Now, if you've been around church for like 2 seconds, you know that normally when Jesus is at a party, it's with sinners and tax collectors, right? That's usually the party where you see Jesus hanging out with. I know, Ted, you just said that, it hurts you when people say stuff like this, but I'll just throw this out there. It's like the parties that you didn't go to in high school. That's usually the party. You wanted to be. Yeah. Like, those parties that you're like, yeah, that's usually where you found Jesus in the New Testament. But it's interesting in this story because you see Jesus in a different context. You see Jesus at a religious leader's house, right? And so more like the parties that you probably had, So Jesus goes to this party, K-Love verses playing. It's nice, maybe a Bible study in the middle of the party or whatever, Kool-Aid and, punch and all that stuff. And so, but listen to what happens. It's very fascinating. It's in Luke chapter 7, verse 36. The writer says this. It says, one of the Pharisees, a religious leader, invited Jesus to come have dinner with him. And Jesus went to his house and reclined at the table. I love that. Jesus didn't just say yes to people who are sinners and tax collectors and prostitutes. This religious leader is like, hey, you want to come hang? And Jesus is like, I'm going to come. So Jesus goes there, and he's reclining at the table. And the writer says, a woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the table at the Pharisee's house. And so she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. Now, I've read this story a million times, and I always just assumed that the lady just stalked the party, maybe on Facebook, and or she saw it on Twitter somewhere, or she hired a private, investigator, and he's like, that's
I
where
don't have
Jesus is.
Facebook,
I
I
don't
wouldn't
know.
know.
You don't have Facebook? You don't even have a joint Facebook, like a husband and wife one, like
Just
that?
live vicariously.
You just live through
Tabby.
her. Okay, it's too much sin on Facebook, right? I wish I didn't have Facebook, and so, but sorry, Ted. This will get better, I promise. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but so he's there. The woman shows up, right? But I think it's maybe more accurate to assume that the religious leader publicized this, right? I mean, if Jesus was coming to his house, he wanted people to know. Maybe he got a big banner outside his house saying, guess what? Jesus is here. We don't know how. All we know is the woman showed up. And then verse 38 says, she stood behind him, Jesus, at his feet, weeping. Now, don't miss this. It says, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair. She kissed them, and she poured perfume on them. Ted, I don't know when it was that I read this last, but I wrote, you can see in my Bible, I wrote so weird, right? Right? The last time I read this, I just thought to myself, this is so weird. And if you've grown up in church, you've probably heard the story a million times, but I want us to just pause for a second and just consider how weird this is, okay? And I know there's some cultural things that change it a little bit, but can you imagine if you were at a party and you're having a nice dinner and having a nice conversation, and all of a sudden this woman walked in from the street and she's crashing the party and she's not invited, and that's kind of weird and kind of awkward, and she doesn't say anything, and then she goes behind Jesus and you're like, weird, And then what does she do when she get there? And then she went to his feet and she starts weeping and crying. You ever been in a situation where someone's crying without context and you're like, I don't even know why you're crying. I can't even be sad with you because I don't know why you're crying. She is weeping, and then she began to wet his feet with her tears. Yeah, weird. Creepy, she said. And then she wiped them with her hair. And then she kissed his feet. And then the writer says that she poured perfume on his feet. I read this a long time ago, and I wrote in my Bible, this is so weird because it is, right? It's really awkward, right? Just imagine what it was like to be in that moment. But what I think is fascinating about this story is to see how everybody else responded, especially the guy who was hosting the party. You want to read that part, Ted? Just kind of jump in.
Yeah, well, I mean, to piggyback off what you're saying, like, sometimes I try to put myself like in the context of the word and imagine being there. It just makes it come alive a little bit. So I don't know. I kind of want to ask you, how would you respond? Like this, she's in here, she's bawling her eyes out, and maybe not how you would respond. I think a lot of us would just like be sitting there, like, should I stop eating? Should I take another bite so it's not like so awkward?
Tell a joke.
Like
just,
does Jesus know like who that is, or like? Yeah, how did she even get that? Did the bouncer, like, is he in the restroom? Or how did she get in
what's going on?
and end up here?
I probably got my phone trying to record it, like, hey, let's get this on YouTube. This is so weird.
So and again, me being there, I think I would just sitting at the table with Jesus. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm just glad to be there at the table with him. And then this woman just waltzes right in and, like, gets to touch him. Like, she got to touch Jesus. Yeah. Like, I'm sorry, I wash my hair every day, but after that, I wouldn't wash my hair ever again. Like, she got to touch Jesus' feet with her hair. It's awesome. Let's see what Simon was thinking. So verse 39 there. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who's touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner. And Jesus answered him, and you got to watch out for, if you're hanging out with someone who can read your mind, you got to watch what you're thinking.
Yeah.
So
awkward.
So Jesus answers.
Like if I was around Jesus, I'd be like, don't think anything, don't think anything, don't think anything, don't think anything.
Right.
And he's like, stop saying that. I was like, dang it.
So Jesus answers Simon, I have something to tell you.
Ooh, yeah, that's right.
Tell me, teacher, he said. So, like Craig, that response, like, if you're Simon, I just wonder, like, what Simon's tone was when he said, tell me, teacher. Because, like, it just doesn't sound like a compassionate response that, given the situation, this woman is bawling her eyes out at his feet and wiping his feet and cleaning his feet, And Jesus, so Craig, like, what would you do? Like, Jesus turns to you and he's like, as this is happening, by the way, Craig, I have something to tell you. Yeah,
What's going
right.
on?
Thank you. I'm glad you had that response because, like, yeah, it'd be like, is now a good time? Do you, like, what are you about? Yeah.
Yeah.
But Simon, on the other hand, Simon, bless his heart, is just like, tell me, teacher. Like, I know the answer. I
Yeah.
know where. Anyhow, so Jesus says, two people owed money to a certain moneylender. One owed him 500 denarii or 500 days' wages, and the other 50. And neither of them had the money to pay it back. So he forgave the debts of both. Now, which one of them will love him more? Simon replied, I suppose the one who had the bigger debt forgiven. You've judged correctly, Jesus said. And Simon's a well-educated man. Like, he's putting two and two together by now, right?
Yeah.
Like, he sees that Jesus totally just framed him. Like, oh yeah, you're the 50
It's like that.
denarii.
It's a trap gift, That's
Right.
like that's what this is. It's like, yeah.
Simon, you're the 50 denarii guy.
Yeah.
Mary, she used the 500, and clearly she loves me more. And he, I just wonder. Simon's probably like, okay, I'm glad he stopped there. Like, I hope none of my friends are catching on to this. I got the point. Thank you. And but then Jesus like goes in deeper.
Yeah, it's interesting how Simon's like, I suppose, It's like, it's kind of like, I suppose, And Jesus like, you judge correctly. It's like, good answer. It's like Family Feud. It's like, good answer, It's just setting the trap even bigger. And then Jesus said this. Now, again, just a quick summary, because I don't want you to miss the weight of this. They're at a party at a religious leader's house. It's going great. This woman interrupts. It's super awkward. It reminds me of just yesterday, my wife and I were flying back with our kids from vacation. And our kids have usually been great on trips, not a vacation. Sorry, correct myself there. It's not a vacation with kids, it's a trip. And so we're coming back from our trip to Florida, and she's the best baby we've ever had. And she cried for an hour on the flight. Parents, have you ever been that person on the flight? Is there anything worse than your baby crying and everybody on the flight is thinking about you, right? I mean, it's like you're just like sitting there and the guy next to me is trying to sleep and trying to watch a movie, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I wanted to get on the intercom and be like, I apologize to every single one of you. I mean, it's a weird moment when it's you and everybody's focused on you. It's really uncomfortable. And so imagine what it was like for this woman to come in the party. And we don't know how many people at the party. What we do know, though, is that everything stopped. The DJ cut the music. Like, people were like half by. Like, everyone is focused on her. And I love it because it says in verse 44, then Jesus turned to this woman, right? And then he said to Simon, this is amazing, don't miss this. He says, do you see this woman? And Simon's like, well, of course I see her. Everybody sees her. But Jesus is trying to make a point. Like, you see her, but you don't see her. You see her, but you don't see what I see when I look at her. And then he says this. He says, I came into your house, and watch Jesus redeem what she did. He says, you didn't give me any water for my feet, which was customary in the first century. But she wet my feet with her tears, and she wiped them with her hair. Verse 45, you didn't give me a kiss, but this woman, from the time I entered, has not stopped kissing my feet. Verse 46, Jesus, again, he's redeeming every part of the story. Jesus says, Simon, you didn't put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. And verse 47 is like the knockout punch, right? Jesus has just been giving him a 1-2 here and there, and he's about to just like drive the point home. Then he says this in verse 47. Jesus says, therefore I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. But whoever has been forgiven little loves little. 2 weeks ago, Ted and I were reading this in my office. And Ted, you said something that stuck to me. You're like, that verse has always bothered me. And I love when people have this kind of reactions to Scripture, right? Because we're supposed to all just be like, oh, that's a great verse. Jesus said it. It's in red, so I accept it.
Post it on Facebook or something.
Yeah, exactly. We're like, hey, here I am with my coffee cup reading, Luke 7, verse 47, But I love that. You're like, this bothers me, and it's always bothered me. Can you talk a little bit of that? Why does what Jesus say here to Simon and this woman bother you so much?
Yeah, and a little bit goes back to, I mentioned I almost wish there was this big outward sin, rock bottom experience I had, because, another reason, in addition to just people not just being able to put my name imperfect in a sentence is
Yeah.
so I can relate to people and know what they're going through. Maybe then I could have enough leverage to have an impact. And the other, I don't know if you guys have been in like Christian circles where you got like women's time and you got men's time, and like we all know like what's going on in those contexts.
I don't know what's going on in the women's time, but I know what's going on in the men's time. So
Yeah.
the women always come out smiling. The guys come out with their head to the
Yeah,
ground in
right.
shame.
And you get together and there's this
Yeah.
close-knit group of guys and you're sharing just real stuff, and you can build one another up, and it's so good. And but during those times, I just remember feeling like, this is hard to say, but like I'm scraping for something to share, scraping for something to let them know that, I'm being real. I am a sinner. I'm saved by grace, and that and it's just hard finding something to share. And there's no way that in those contexts, talking about how difficult humility is, right? Even when you're humble, you're proud that you're humble, and
Yeah.
or that, how easy it is to confuse, again, me being being a servant, like how easy it is to have those mind games and those thoughts that, being a people pleaser and the sick things that go playing games in your head.
Yeah.
Of being a people pleaser versus a genuine servant. Like, there's no way sharing those kinds of things in that context that those guys are like, oh yeah, Ted's not hiding, Ted's hiding something.
Yeah.
And so so it bothered me for that reason. It also bothered me, and right along with the passage with what Jesus said, I want to have the testimony, and I want to have the passion that this woman had. I want to have the zeal for Christ that my dad has. That my grandma has, Tabby's mom has, Aaron Kent. Like, don't I get to have that too? Like, that's bothered me because
it feel like, sorry to interrupt you, Ted, but it almost feels like Jesus is implying that because you haven't done all this crazy stuff to Simon that she did, then you don't get to love like she loves, right? She's been forgiven a lot, so she loves a lot. Simon, you've only done a little bit, so that's only, and you said part of that bothers you because you want to have that kind of a posture towards God.
Yeah, and it's just so confusing because it can't be that God would have us, all of us, have to go through something in order to love him. Like, it just doesn't jive. But at the same time, Jesus says, she's the one in debt 500, or she's sin, so she loves more, and but at the same time, doesn't he want us to have so I just not felt like I could fit. It just bothered me to have a 50 denarii testimony, but be able to love like that. And and not to mention, Proverbs, doesn't Proverbs tell me that I should train up my children in the way they should go, and in the end they will not depart from it? Like, that sounds like a 50 denarii testimony to me. Do they, kind of wonder for my kids, are they going to get to have the zeal for God that I hope that they will have? So yeah, it's bothersome.
Yeah, it's a fascinating statement that Jesus makes, and I think that I think it's important for us to look at what Jesus emphasizes, or we miss the point of what he's saying. And so I'm just going to read to you verse 42 again. I know I'm messing up the slides, but listen to what he said. He said, neither of them had any money to pay him back, right? And so when we read stories like this, we tend to focus on how much they owed. This guy owed 500 and this guy only owed 50, right? But I think, to me, the emphasis of the story is that neither of them could pay him back, right? So it didn't really matter if you owed 50 or 10 or 500 or $1 million. Like, you were in debt and you couldn't pay him back. And so, and I know that, we were kind of laughing earlier about never have I will on a scale of Sam to Ted or whatever. But part of the reason we did that is because I think most of us, even if you're in the room today and you're not a church person or whatever, we all tend to view life from a perspective of the good and bad scale, right? That's what we all do, right? I mean, we've said stuff or thought stuff like, hey, I'm not Mother Teresa, but I'm not Hitler either, right? That's what we like to do. Like we try to scale ourselves, right? And so this person owes this much and this person owes this much. And I think what Jesus is doing in this passage is Jesus is trying to expose the scale, right? Jesus is trying to do what he did a lot of times. He's trying to flip the entire narrative, right? And we talked about this earlier, Ted. It's interesting how our stories are different, but if you pay close attention, growing up in church, we believe the similar lie, right? Different stories, similar lie, right? The lie that we believed is, I believed the lie that I was too bad to find my space. You believe the lie that you are not bad enough or you're too good, right? Like you weren't that bad. So I'm too bad, I'm not that bad, right? And so when you look at Simon and this woman, it's the same narrative, right? And it's a similar lie that we're tempted to believe. We all gravitate towards one of those two lies. Either we grow up thinking, hey, I'm too bad to have a place in God's story, or I'm not that bad, and because I'm not that bad, I have a place in God's story, right? We're trying to figure out good and bad, and then Jesus steps into the scene, and Jesus is like, you're both dead, right? Isn't that the plot twist? You're like, I'm too bad, I'm not bad at it. He's like, you're both dead, Well, my good is more than my bad is more than good. He's like, hey, you're both dead. And we've talked about this so many times, but I'm going to keep repeating it as long as they keep giving me a mic and don't turn me off in the back, even though I'm always messing with my mic and, throwing a wrench in everything. Jesus did not come to make bad people good. Jesus came to bring dead people to life, right? Jesus said that over and over again, right? That's the gospel. Jesus didn't come in, and we all have this, like, maybe someday, and I get to the pearly gates, and we're like, hopefully I did more good than bad. No, Jesus is like, no, you're all dead. The wages of sin is death. Jesus came because we all face the penalty of death, and then he paid the price for our debt. He came to bring dead people to life. And so the lead story in this is not so much that, man, he owed a lot or she owed a lot and he didn't owe that much, right? The emphasis on the story is that neither of them could pay it back, but Jesus paid it back, right? And Ted, you said something as we were preparing for this that I thought was so good and changes how you view this narrative. You said, regardless of what they owed, the cost is the same. Right? I mean, come on now, that's so good. He's like 50 or 100, and I think that's what we miss. The cost is the same. So Ted did it right as best as he could. I tried my best to do it as wrong as I could. Aaron tried his best to do his own thing. But at the end of the day, right, the point that Jesus is making is that the cost to pay the debt is the same. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. And I'm so grateful for that realization that the cost is the same, because thankfully I don't believe that we have to experience this rock bottom. We don't have to go through these things. We don't have to have 500 denarii worth of debt in order to have the posture that Mary Magdalene had.
Yeah.
And that's really reassuring. And the only reason that we Simons love little is because there's something we just can't see. We see 50, we see 500.
Yeah.
But the reality is we are all infinitely in debt.
Yeah.
Every one of us, we're infinitely in debt. We can never pay it back. You see, we've kind of messed with you a little bit. You're kind of categorizing yourself as somewhere on this scale. Even we went up to 1 million. That's pretty high up there. But the cost is the same. It cost Jesus the same exact thing to redeem me as it cost to redeem that thief, to redeem that abusive drug addict, to redeem those Android users.
That's right. Preach. He's preaching. He's preaching.
Those Detroit Lions fans.
Yes.
Sammy Adeby.
Yes, that's right.
It cost Jesus the same to redeem me as it cost to redeem my brother, who I spent hours and hours and hours and hours with playing basketball and football and everything in the backyard, who's who's now in prison. We're no different. The cost was the same for both of us. God is so good. He's so good for him to have gone through what he went through for us. And I'm so glad he did, because if he hadn't, there's not one of us in here. There's not one of us in here that would make it out alive.
That's right.
It doesn't matter if
That's right.
we only deserved 1 spanking or 500 spankings. Actually, last night, I came home after prepping for this, and it was like 8:30 or 9 o'clock. Tabby had texted me, and I said, "How's it going?" She said, "We're on spanking number 5, and Brinley doesn't have Hoot, which is her little owl that she sleeps with. When you take Hoot away, we really got problems." But so 5 times Tabby had to give her consequences. I don't know if I said consequences earlier, but 5 times. And so I'm like, all right, Lord, how are we going to get her to get in bed and to obey? And I said, can I read with her? And she came down when I got home, and we went upstairs, and I had to give her a consequence. I asked Tabby, we made eye contact, like, do I need to give her a consequence? And so I still gave her a consequence. And what did she say to you, Tabby? She said, Daddy's going to read me something in the Bible, and it'll help me obey, or something like that. And and so we go upstairs and give her a consequence. She was really receptive to it. She didn't fight it. And afterward, we read Luke 7 and talked about 500 spankings and 50 spankings. And she's, when I said 500 spankings, she almost had a tear coming in her eye. She's like, yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And said Jesus forgave them both. Which one would love him more? And I think the one that was going to get 500 spankings, that's a lot. And we talked about the woman, and I said, why did the woman do that? After we read the preview and what she was doing, I said, why was the woman crying like that? Or she asked me why she did that. And I said, because she realized what Jesus had done for them, or what he was going to do for her. And that she was a sinner and she needed forgiven. And do you know what Jesus is going to do for her? And she said that he would die for her. And she said, but he would die for all of us.
Yeah.
And she understood that the cost was the same for all of us. And I was just, it was probably the best moment. And I'm grateful that she disobeyed 5 times, that we got to do that. But so where does this bring me to? A couple things that kind of I go back to that God's given me is, it's not glorifying God. I think I grew up a lot trying to glorify God and do the right thing. He's already got the glory. Yeah. He is already so good. Anything I can offer is just filthy rags, right? Yeah. But it's the response. I'm striving to live in response to what Jesus Christ has done for me. Yeah. The other thing is, and this is a little bit challenging, but if there's any part of my life, if it's not in some facet pointing people to Jesus Christ, that part of my life is useless. Really just examining myself and being like, it's all about him. He's so good. And if any part is not pointing back to him, it's not worth it. It's useless.
Cost is the same. I don't know if you guys caught it in the song that cost is the same. You caught it in that song that we sang before. But it said, forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus. And that's the emphasis, right? Neither of them could pay back. Jesus forgave them both. But the guy who owed 500, it cost the blood of Jesus. For the person who owed 50, it cost the blood of Jesus. right? Regardless of where you put yourself on the scale, it costs the death and the resurrection of Jesus to receive forgiveness. And so the question I kind of want to just end with this morning is, so then what is the difference, right? If the cost is the same and the emphasis is not on how much they owed, then I think the difference between the two is their perception or understanding of the grace that they've been given. You guys have heard me share this before, but I'll never forget my first 4th of July after I became an American citizen. My wife and I went to the store and I bought every American thing I could find. I had American flag sunglasses, a big hat, a shirt, pants. It was over the top. I went downtown. I looked like a clown, right? I was so excited. I remember when there were fireworks and they're singing, "I'm proud to be an American." I mean, I grew up, born and raised, third world country. Never, this in my wildest dream did I ever think that there would be a day that I could sing that song. And I remember standing there singing that song, just tears falling down my face, just so grateful. Like, this is amazing. And everyone else around is like, "Hey, pass the hot dog, bro," And I wanted to walk up to everybody. I'm like, "Do you understand? Like, this is amazing." And it's interesting to think of the difference between me and everybody there. It's not like I had more freedom than anybody else. Like we were all American. The difference is the understanding and the perception. The difference is they'd been that their whole lives, right? The difference is I'm going, this is like an impossible dream come true. And I was just like in tears, and I couldn't believe the privilege that I had just been given and how much it costs for me to be able to have
it's just
that.
remembering. Remembering. Like all the rest of the people there, like we just forget the country we live in, or we forget. And when we were praying together earlier, you said something that really hit me, and it goes back to remembering and praying and asking God that His grace would not get old.
Yeah. Yep.
His grace would not get old.
That's right. Because guess what? Now I go to 4th of July and I look more like those people. Right now I'm like eating the hot dog going, "What's up? I've been here, done that," right? It's not new anymore. And I think that's what happens to us if we've been around church for a long time, is we tend to drift towards cliche, heard it before, nothing new. And my prayer, Ted and I were praying in my office on our knees for ourselves, for you guys, is that God, will you incline our hearts to you? Give us the posture of that woman, right? I said earlier, every single person in here can identify with one person in this story. So which one are you? Which one are you closer to? Are you the guy that's around the table with his arms folded going, Or are you the lady who's on her face going, "I don't care what anybody thinks of me in this moment, because I understand what it costs for me to have life," right? When was the last time you lived or did something in a way where people are looking at you going, "That's weird, and that's strange, and that's awkward, and why would you do that, or clap like that, or sing like that, or jump like that, or talk like that, or live like that?" And the whole time they're thinking that, you're thinking to yourself, "You don't know my story. If you knew my story, you would join me in singing like that, and clapping like that, and jumping like that, and living like that, because I was dead. I owed a debt I could never pay. I could work my whole life. I could never pay it. And then this guy came in. His name was Jesus, and he paid my debt, and he cost him his life. And this is the least that I can do." And so that's my prayer from my heart. That's my prayer for all of us, regardless of where you are on the scale. If you've been following Jesus your whole life, or if you don't have a friendship with Jesus, we all get to stand at equal ground at the cross of Jesus Christ.